Hello and welcome back to Learn It from a Layman. I am Carl Christensen, joined again, finally, despite my better judgment, by Tim. I wrestle wombats cocks.
How would that go? I've never gone through that thought experiment of wrestling a wombat.
But you should. Not only a thought
Everyone
experiment, I actually think that would be our first viral hit, is if we could just get you to wrestle a wombat, I think we really have something.
Yeah, it'd probably be a viral hit because of like the legal fallout afterwards. I imagine that like getting a hold of a wombat and then wrestling it would probably break some laws.
Well, I mean, if we got wombat consent.
Wombat consent, that's right.
Actually, my brother. Okay, we're already like derailed. We're supposed to be talking about the basics of the outback, which is
wombats,
why wombats. Yeah, wombats are like topical, you know.
Not derailed. That's relevant.
But for those that are looking for deep outback information, the picture of you wrestling a wombat probably isn't what they had in mind.
Yeah, well, impressions can change. That's
and some deserve to not.
That's right. Cool. But
okay.
Yes.
This is, by the way, blatant pandering to our Australian, and like I actually don't know, Tim, and maybe you can answer this tonight. Is Tasmania considered the outback? I don't know.
No, not the official outback. No.
Okay. All right.
But
well,
for Americans like us who are really quite ignorant, we can just roll it all up in a southern oceanic burrito, and there you go.
I don't think burritos are like what they eat there.
Burritos are the ultimate fusion food. They're going to take over everywhere. Someday when I own a restaurant, we're going to specialize in like, teriyaki burritos and, like curry burritos. It's going to be great.
Yeah. The teacher to restaurant owner pipeline, very frequent, something most people are familiar with.
Its rarity is just more evidence that there's a niche to be filled. So clearly.
Okay. All right. Let's talk outback. You're going to be teaching us today, Tim, but I do have to. I mean, some of our longtime listeners might know because it's come up a couple times in our podcast in the past. I have never been to Australia, but our one-time guest Gary Newvine, who talked about solar panels like 3.5 years ago or something, he lived there for, I don't know, how long did he live there? Maybe a decade-ish. And his wife is from there, who I know very well, and she used to be friends with Chris Hemsworth, a little known actor.
He was it Pride and Prejudice, Sensibility? I get it mixed up. Yeah, okay. Chris Hemsworth. That's right.
Yeah, also of the Australian persuasion.
Also, not Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility. So, if he were to star in one of those, I would watch it for sure.
And so would a lot of women. So,
well, it's Pride and Prejudice and Sensibility. It's of course.
Anyway, the Newvine family, Gary and Deshelle, are my connection to the Outback. Having never been there myself, if I have any Australian questions, I always go to them. But for whatever poor decision making, I've now asked you to talk about the Outback. So, Tim, regale us with Australian facts.
That's right, and I did thorough and extensive, comprehensive research. You can trust that these facts, and for all our Australian listeners out there, you will undoubtedly, as I go, be nodding your head, saying, finally, an American who really understands. And the Australia,
Okay.
Anyways, the sarcasm really is dripping here. So, okay, my reference sources, we've got Rescuers Down Under, Crocodile Dundee. Those are the main ones. And Bluey. So there you go.
Okay, so we've got a bunch of fictional TV shows from which you can
Movies.
draw.
Oh, and a TV show. Yeah. Okay, so
Well-
Outback facts. Here you go. You wanted to know about the Australian Outback. Well, here you got it. First of all, fact number one, it's big. All right, and that's it. It really is. Like if you actually look, like Australia looks kind of not so biggish when you look at it on a map. I think in part because it's like right underneath
Especially,
Asia.
right. Well, especially when you zoom out on the map.
When you zoom that's right. No, but I mean, next to Asia, everything looks smaller. But if you were like to bring Australia and lift it and drop it over, like, for us Americans, you drop it onto America, it's big. It's covering up like the United States, and Australia as a nation isn't quite as large as the United States, but as far as the contiguous United States goes, it's comparably about the same size. So you can imagine now, take the Australian Outback or take a map of Australia, and if you kind of shave off the I always think of Australia as it's like a boar hanging upside down. Does that make sense? Like the west southwestern corner is like the snout, and the top is like the hooves on each. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But if you take kind of shave off the southeastern, a slice of the southeast and a small slice of the southwest, and like the tips of the top of Australia, the rest is like the outback, and so it's really big. Lots of Texases would fit in the outback, and so if you've ever driven through Texas, which I haven't, but I'm told it takes a long time, and most of it is very dry. One of the driest places in the world. Australia itself is the driest continent in the world, a lived-in continent, not counting Antarctica, which is technically the driest continent in the world, but Australia is the driest inhabited continent. So it's a whole lot of stuff, and that'll play into some other facts that I'm going to get into later. But first, let's go back in time. Australia was the last inhabited continent to be settled by humans. Wait, check me on that. I believe so. It was settled apparently 3,000 to 5,000 years ago. Though my research on that was casual and incidental.
Did you learn it from Bluey?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Well, no, that was Rescuers Down Under. It's no, but I believe that I'm correct on that, because they're talking about the article I was reading was talking about the dingo introduction being 3,000 to 5,000 years ago. So, and I believe that Australia was settled as part of the Polynesian diaspora, which happened in that time frame. So, anyway, sorry,
it does agree with. Well, wait a second.
Oh, you fact checking me on the spot?
I'm fact checking you on the spot. I mean, we have AI these days, so
that's right.
It's funny because I have like the AI blurb at the top of Google, right? That's their like AI engine thingy, and then right below it they have their featured snippet, which is like their the piece of, and they contradict each other.
Yeah, nice.
The AI says no, and the first hit says yes. But it was according to these things, we're looking tens of thousands of years ago, Tim. Just FYI.
Whoa. Okay, so wait, give me a date for like.
This says the evidence of human in Australia, right? 50,000 years ago.
Okay, well there we go. I was only off by a factor of 10, so it's not terrible. But well, in any case, Australia was, anyways, the last to be settled, I believe, as far as major continents go, and the settling of Australia, I believe, coincided with the extinction of lots of marsupial megafauna, which some is also attributed to the arrival of the dingo, which it's believed that humans brought dingoes with them. So the dingo has only been part of the Australian habitat for a few thousand years, give or take, depending on what your source is. But in any case, it's interesting because the dingo is now the natural apex predator in Australia. And so it's an interesting example of how actually human introduced invasive species has now become the natural, and I think there's still like discussion and debate about dingoes and stuff, but it's now the apex predator. In fact, and so here's my next fact: Australia is home to the world's longest fence, the dingo fence, which is really long, as in 5,614 kilometers. That's 3,448 miles. And it basically partitions off the right, like fourth almost of a chunk of Australia. If you were to just like, it's kind of a curvy, jumbly line, but this fence, they started building it, I don't know, in the late 1800s. They were trying to, okay, Australia, one of its foundational, when Europeans came and the British started settling it in, I think, the 1700s, sheep grazing became a key part of its economy, and of course, dingoes, being the apex predators, were in conflict with the sheep farming, shepherding of
Probably
Australia.
like a difference of opinion, right? I mean, the sheep and the dingoes kind of had different political views, maybe.
Yes, absolutely. And their interactions were probably comparable to some of the political interactions that we see nowadays. But anyway, so they started to. I mean, obviously, there's killing of dingoes and poisoning dingoes and that kind of thing, and there was also, well, okay, so sorry, I'm going to diverge a little bit here, but rabbits were also introduced in the like 1800s, and then became a problem because with limited natural predators, they just exploded and spread a lot, and they were eating down the grass and everything, and so they were trying to keep rabbits out, so building rabbit fences. And but anyways, over time they built this idea of a dingo fence. If we could keep the dingoes out, then our sheep will be safe and we won't have to worry about it. And so now there's this huge fence. It's not completely dingo proof. Dingoes will find ways around and through, or well, not around. It basically goes from the bottom central to the west center. It goes border to border though, practically. But dingoes will find weak spots and get through and that kind of thing. So the southeastern chunk of Australia is largely dingo free. And it's been actually an interesting thing to observe because that affects the environment. It has a cascading effect on ecosystem and the animals. So for example, there are more kangaroos and rabbits and stuff in that southeastern section because there's less predation, and so it has of course effects on the vegetation and so forth. But anyways, you got interesting fence action going on there. Just one of the longest structures in the world, the dingo fence. So there you go.
How does it compare to the Great Wall of China? And was the Great Wall also built for dingoes?
These are, Carl, I like how you ask the hard-hitting questions, the ones that other people are afraid to ask because they're really goofy. And no, so actually, one of the articles I was reading, it actually they asked, or someone compared it to the Great Wall. Some professor, he said it's oh shoot, where is it? I think he said it's longer than the Great Wall, and not as well built, or something like that. Darn, I'll have to find it. But yeah,
you mean you can't like climb on top of the dingo fence and walk along like
yeah, that's right.
You and I may have done many years ago?
That's right, and you can't barf on it with nearly the same effect. It's are you allowed to do inside jokes on a on a podcast.
You always, 100% of the time. Nobody's listening, Tim. Don't worry about it.
That's right. I'm Googling the length of the Great Wall of China, and it is definitely longer. 21,196 kilometers. But I will note that the Great Wall of China is not necessarily continuous in the sense that we tend to think of it like in the movies and whatnot. The wall construction in the Ming Dynasty, the most well-preserved section is about 8,850 kilometers long. So but anyways, the dingo fence is, I believe, continuous. So there are two different things, apples and oranges. One is a military wall, the other is a dingo fence.
Okay.
But yeah,
got
it. Dingoes are cool, by the way. They're wild dogs. And
you just got done telling us that they were like the scourge of humanity and a sheep.
Sheep slayers. I mean, if you're a shepherd in Australia, then dingoes are bad. For everyone else, dingoes are cool.
Okay.
But yeah, anyways, apex predators. And now that the damage is done, I mean, and when I say the damage, I'm talking about the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger, which was the apex predator in Australia before humans and dingoes came along and sent it packing. So, and the Thylacine is cool, an awesome example of convergent evolution. If you look at an example or look up a picture of a Thylacine Tasmanian tiger, it looks a lot like a wolf or a coyote, but it's totally not related. It's a marsupial, and it had these kind of stripes on its back and hindquarters, and yeah, it was the marsupial apex predator. And so it's just kind of cool to think how Australia, the Australian ecological systems developed independently of systems in other continents, but we had this convergent evolution where you've got the same, including the same kinds of body shapes, facial shapes, and so forth. So thylacines are cool. They are, if you haven't heard of them, yeah, they're apex predators. The last one died in like the 1930s, I think, in like some zoo, and it was really sad. Yeah, they got exterminated by, again, people in Australia who didn't like them eating their sheep and so forth, and also by the fact that their habitat was being degraded and fragmented and so forth. So there is a movement kind of like Bigfoot in the United States, where there's thylacine sightings and people post videos of large animals in Tasmania or Australia, and claiming or hoping that it's a Tasmanian tiger. It would be awesome if they turned out to not be extinct, but it's been an awfully long time since an actual documented sighting, making it very unlikely that the thylacine actually survived. Though don't despair completely. However, there are efforts to recreate thylacines through DNA and cloning technology and so forth, just as there are with the woolly mammoth. Of course, there's a vigorous debate going on about that. Should we devote resources to that, or should we divert them to saving species that are still, alive and not extinct? But in any case, who knows? Maybe you or your grandkids will get to pet a real thylacine at a Australian Jurassic Park. Mammoth. Yes, that's right. That'd be cool. But in any case, that's the Tasmanian tiger. Very cool creature that it is sad that they're not around anymore, presumably. Yeah. Okay, well, now that I've
we don't know that Sasquatch or Bigfoot didn't take it as like a house pet.
That's right. They're all hanging out together in that one place that no one's ever been to. So.
But that you get blurry pictures of on occasion.
Yeah, that's right. It's just the weather. There's a lot of humidity. It gets on the lens. Okay, well, I've brought you down with a sad story, so now I'm going to bring you back up with a happy story. The Australian night parrot. And this is something that was just in the news recently. So there are only two nocturnal parrots in the world. One is the kakapo of New Zealand, which is
Sure, it's not cockapoo.
That's what they produce. And
Okay.
I am probably pronouncing it wrong, but it's Kiwis can correct me. But in any case, it is a fat, flightless, ground-dwelling parrot that lives in New Zealand. They de-evolved the ability to fly because they had no ground predators to fly away from. So they actually feed in the trees, eating, I think, fruit, but they climb to get it. They're very good climbers, using their feet and beaks to grip and climb up. So they'll climb up, eat the food, and then climb back down. But yeah, now they're being decimated, of course, by ground-based predators, introduced invasive species like cats and foxes and rats. So anyways.
So it was pretty short-sighted of them to stop flying.
Yeah. What were they thinking? Come on, guys. But the New Zealand is making efforts to save them, and hopefully that will go well. Of course, we're in the outback, not New Zealand. Sorry, New Zealand. But Australia also has a ground-dwelling parrot that is also nocturnal, the night parrot. It can fly, but interestingly enough, hasn't developed a like good night vision or anything. So they've actually found specimens that died by flying into a fence or whatever. They fly at night.
I'm sorry, that's kind of funny, right? I mean, what? Are we sure this isn't just a parrot with insomnia? It doesn't have any, it can't see at night, but it decides that that's when it should be awake.
Well, yeah.
It's like a species of insomniac parrots to me. They just need to get back on, they need to fix their circadian rhythm.
The problem is they're on their cell phones, and so they stay up late.
Oh, yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah. No, so actually, they live in grasslands, and so there's it's not trees and stuff, so there's really nothing for them to fly into, at least in their traditional habitat. They actually developed the nocturnal lifestyle because it's a very hot area, and so it's and instead of predator avoidance, which is a lot of times where you become nocturnal or vice versa, but it was a temperature survival technique. They're taking advantage of the best time to be out and about, and so they feed and nest in grasslands. Of course, they got house cats apparently are a major problem for them. So, but they just discovered, so there are two breeding populations that they've found that are surviving in these remote areas, and so they're trying to protect them and protect their habitat, because habitat loss is another problem, of course. But yeah, so it's kind of cool. These night parrots, those two are the only two nocturnal parrots. Fun times.
You mentioned that house cats are a problem for them. I would argue for whom are house cats not a problem.
Don't let my wife hear you say that. She's house cats are wonderful companions. They're good listeners.
After offending a good percentage of our listeners, I do not hate house cats, just so we're clear.
You'll have to prove it by getting one, Carl.
I am not the master of my own fate when it comes to pets in my home.
You and me both. You and me both. That's right. But yeah, anyways, so cats are super cool. We'll have to do one on cats, but anyways,
they're interesting.
But they're very successful predators, of course, which is why they just tear up species that haven't developed the ability to defend themselves against them. But in any case, so those are some of the interesting fauna that you might encounter in Australia. I'm also going to bring up Brumbies, just because that's fun to say. Brumbies. And Brumbies are...
What about the wombat?
Oh, and wombats. Yes. Well, you know what? While we're on wombats, I'm going to also talk about... Actually, I'm going to talk about another one. The tree kangaroos, which is a real thing also. They're super cool. They live in the very northern tips of Australia, which is the tropical region, and on New Guinea and a few islands in that area. But yeah, they're these they're marsupials, and they climb trees. They're related to kangaroos. Yeah, tree kangaroos, kind of cool. You should look them up.
Sounds snooty to me.
Yeah,
Too
that's
good
right.
for the normal kangaroos.
You know, in my very limited reading, I think actually it was kangaroos that descended from tree-dwelling marsupials, and not vice versa. So, yeah, kangaroos that we know are the derivative form, maybe.
All right.
So, anyways, but yeah, so but yeah, and while I'm on kangaroos, I'm giving you all some homework. You need to go watch Crocodile Dundee and make sure you watch the scene with the kangaroos and the poachers and the machine guns. It's classic. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's just awesome.
Can you spoil a movie that's like 30 years old?
Well, kind of. See, it's cyclical, Carl.
That's fair.
A movie in the last 10 years, you can't spoil. You know, say the last 2 years, you can spoil it because people haven't seen it. Last 10 years, they deserve to get spoiled because they should have seen it. But 30 years ago, or what's Crocodile Dundee? 40 years ago.
I mean, it's at least 30. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So now you've got a whole generation of people that have grown up. Some of them may not even know the whole "that's not a knife, this is a knife" line, you know, which is a crying shame. So go out and watch Crocodile Dundee.
If there's one thing you learn from this podcast, that's it.
That's right. And you know, I should take a moment to correct myself. This whole time, been calling it the Outback, but that's actually not correct. It's the Outback. It's how you're supposed to say it. So
you've become a native.
That's right. My brother-in-law, whenever he wants to talk in like an accent, he just says "oi," and he's on his way. And I think it's pretty effective, actually. And I'm sure that's Australians here sagely nodding their heads. Yes, yes, I say "oi" all the time. It's
Australians do have an accent and their own words that are, like I've said, the Newvine family, to whom we are close. Years ago, their daughter was over here, and we had some type of a snack, and then she turned to me, this cute little. At that time, she was probably like, I don't know, 5, and she's like, "Where's the bin?" It was like that scene from Finding Nemo when the little turtles are like, you know, and Nemo's dad I had no idea what she said. And I had her say it again, like, "Where's the bin?" I don't think we have a bin. That's a trash can. So anyway. You make
cool. That's well, another fact for you there. The bin, how do you say it, Carl?
The bin.
The bin. Where's the bin? Yeah. All right, good job. That's there you go. All of these again, deep cultural understanding that you can gain from this podcast. That here's the line. I found the line. It's longer than the Great Wall of China, but not as well built, says ecologist Mike Letnick of the Dingo fence. So there you have it. Okay, so I think we were on Brumbies, right?
You did mention a Brumbie.
And then we went off. So you don't even know what a Brumbie is, do you?
I do not.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you homework then. Go watch The Man from Snowy River, another great Australia movie that supplied, you know, probably a third of my facts. That's a lie, but it is a great movie. And in it, they have Brumbies. In fact, rounding up the Brumbies is like one of the songs. Oh, and Man from Snowy River, excellent soundtrack, by the way. Great music. So, yes, go watch it, listen to the music, and enjoy the movie. It's a great movie about, just go watch it. But they have Brumbies.
Horses.
Yeah, wild horses, the feral horses introduced to Australia. And so, yeah, that's mostly brought that up so I could tell you to go watch The Man from Snowy River.
Okay, very nice. All right, so we've got fauna, do you have flora?
Australia has grass and also other plants.
A variety of dirt.
Yes. Oh, hey, on dirt, they actually have. So I was like, if you look at a picture of Australia, like from space, like a satellite image, you'll see a lot of red soil, high in iron, and I guess there's some areas noted for that. But anyways, it's yeah, a lot of, and I think that might be because it's the one of the, I don't know if the geology of it, but it is like one of the oldest continents as far as like the soil and the upwelling. It's not like it's also the flattest continent out there. There are mountains, but not a lot and not like super tall. Um, Unlike other continents, like you got the Andes of South America and the Himalayas of Asia and so forth, where there's been some recent action really putting stuff up there. The Australia is much older and more worn and wet down and weathered in that sense. So yeah, red soil. Look at if you look at a map of Australia, you can see, especially in the center, there's a lot of red. Um, you'll also see
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, see, and you should
You know
also
what I
see.
can do? I'll put a picture on the YouTube because people don't care about our YouTube channel. So there we go. Okay.
That's right. Now there's a little Easter egg. They can you can go go and inform themselves. Okay. So there's a Australia is also home to, I think, the largest inland emptying river system. It's like it drains into the center, and sometimes in times of rain, it'll like create this huge lake in the kind of in the outback area, but most of the time it's just dry. Lake Eyre. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, or probably let's see, Lake Eyre. That's Scottish. Dang it, Lake Eyre. EYRE.
Oh my.
But my apologies to Scots and Aussies. But darn it, it's so fun to try to have an Australian accent. I just have to. So anyways,
Yeah.
But yeah, when it does get rain, it empties into this kind of basin, and yeah, you'll get this kind of what's that called? Inland delta or whatever. Anyways, that's kind of cool. I think I'm pretty much out of fun facts about
the outback.
The outback. But yeah, any questions?
Yeah, I've heard the steak there is good, and maybe the awesome blossom is that.
That's right. In fact, you should have an Outback Steakhouse Father's Day. Celebrate Dad the Outback way. It's the. Do you know that jingle? It's.
I don't, but if it's going to get us like some Outback
sponsorship, yeah,
totally. Whatever, I'll pander.
I actually do appreciate the old Outback Steakhouse commercials they had with that guy who was like really tough. And anyways,
yeah. Well, Australia is very interesting, and the Outback in particular, obviously, especially for I think I can only speak for Americans because that's what I represent. It almost seems like the frontier. It's like the the unknown and the exciting and the exotic all mixed together, and so it's some it's kind of like an African safari. Like the Outback is kind of the other bucket list type, go out there and hope not to get killed scenario.
Yeah. Oh, and that's another fun fact. I think Australia is home to, well, apparently a lot of snakes, like poisonous snakes and stuff. And I remember seeing something about why there are so many poisonous snakes in Australia, but I can't remember like why.
They've made a pact with the dingoes.
That's right. And then of course you've got saltwater crocodiles, which actually there are instances of human predation. That's like probably the aside from poisonous things, that's the one like animal that is actually quite dangerous in Australia. And yeah, but
Well,
in
I
any
think
case,
I mean, I think most people know this, but like Australia is I believe the least populated, other than, once again, I'm not even counting Antarctica. Like it's technically a continent, but who cares?
take that,
Also,
Antarctica.
I'm not even offending anyone by saying that.
That's right.
Australia is the least populated continent, right? So,
Sure. Like as far as yeah, it's like I think 27 million. Let me check on that.
I just looked. It's 26.
26. All right. Hey, that was pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty good for just making up numbers. 26 million, yeah, people, and I believe the vast majority of them all live on the eastern side, maybe probably the southeastern side. I mean, if you're talking about the dingo fence protecting that area, so
that is yes, that's true.
Right. So, there's the cities that most of us are familiar with, as far as Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Melbourne. Yeah, Melbourne.
Melbourne.
I mean, just wonder if you're supposed to say it like you live there, or say it like you don't live there because you don't live there.
I think we should say it like we don't live there. Melbourne.
Exactly. And then those are your big cities. Adelaide, I think, is reason anyway, and then Perth is the only big city on the west side of Australia. So anyway, interesting. Thank you for the Outback facts. I think we'll probably have some, one member of my Australian family friend come on and debunk pretty much everything you said next time.
Probably. Yep. That, and then we'll let him do a fun facts about North America.
Well, if you're saying him, you're talking about Gary, and Gary did live there for a long time, but he's actually Native American. So,
so
he's got
actually would be knowledgeable.
Yes, exactly. His wife, Deshelle, is the one I should have on. Anyway, whatever. We don't need to discuss podcast guests for future guests. I just want the audience to know that I'm still deeply interested in debunking Tim.
I do have bitter memories of the times you guys, you and your family have proven me wrong on things like when I said, no, I'm not actually drinking bugs. And you're like, yes, you are. And I'm like, what? And
well, I believe that you still owe us a car for not knowing where Timbuktu was.
I think a couple of cars by the time we're all said and done. But,
you actually owe my daughter like $10,000 for not knowing what state
that is still
Statue of Liberty is in.
For debate. That's a subject of controversy.
So for those of you who stuck around to the end of the podcast here, you're now questioning everything you've learned appropriately.
Who are these guys? What have I done with the last hour of my life?
Anyway, well, thank you for joining us for this podcast. Good job, Tim. Tim will be back again in the future, we think. And join us again next podcast. We'll see you then.